That whole idea of log kia kahinga in Hindi, you know, what will people say, what will people think, and oh yeah, you're nodding.
Yeah. Aaklen and Nenepanga, I'm just doing a Tamil equivalent here.
Yeah, yeah.
Hello everybody, how are you doing? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Maaru for those of you who are new. I am very sorry for not making any kind of video content in the last week or so. I've decided to take some time out for myself. But today I am back with a very important video as promised on my Instagram. A session with a good friend, Neha, who is a clinical psychologist, answering and discussing, not really answering, but more discussing topics and issues we think is useful. So we did take all your questions and we did collate a series of topics and generic questions so that we protect Neha's professional and ethical boundaries. And I think it's really important because she's been kind enough to take time and be here, and the least we could do is be nice to her back. And this is actually a disclaimer that we have, is that please don't be offended or hurt by the fact that we're not addressing specific questions you sent through to us. We actually did read all of them and have come up with a list of topics which we feel fit. The reason for that is because especially with private personal questions, there is a chance that you would probably need to complete a full assessment by a professional like Neha, and it doesn't make sense to do it on a video. Off books as well.
Yeah.
That's the disclaimer, very lengthy but very important disclaimer. Let's get started. First thing I'm going to do is get Neha to introduce herself and tell us a bit more about herself.
Awesome. So, hi, I'm Neha. I'm a psychologist and I was born in India and came to New Zealand when I was 8 years old and went to school with this one.
We did.
Yeah, so I'm really passionate about, you know, South Asian mental health issues and really promoting awareness and encouraging people to seek help when they need to, and breaking that stigma that exists within our communities, and yeah, thinking about different therapies and approaches that might be useful for our community as well.
So I'm really excited. I just wanted to say that I'm really excited because I have a series of general questions that I'm going to be asking Neha and get her to give her thoughts on these. So I'm going to be going through one by one, and let's just hope that this video isn't like half an hour or 45 minutes long. Okay, so the first question I have for you is, what does seeing a psychologist look like or feel like?
That's a really good question, and I mean it depends on each psychologist because everyone's got their own different style and different types of therapy that they might be using. But basically a lot of it is, you know, the first couple of sessions is looking at getting to know you a bit more, getting to know what the current difficulties that you might be facing at the moment, and then after those couple of sessions what a psychologist will try and do is bring all of that information together and try and come up with an explanation as to why you're having those difficulties that you are at the moment, and what's feeding into what, and why certain behaviours or certain feelings and certain thoughts are being maintained in the way that they are. And then after we've kind of come up with that big picture, then we can set some goals and think about treatment going forward, and think about some strategies, being able to get you unstuck from whatever that you're stuck with, and try and encourage you to live that awesome life that you want to live.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Next question. How do you go about finding the right therapist or a psychologist for you?
With that, it's again trying to make sure whichever person that you see, you feel comfortable with, you feel safe with, being able to share some of those difficult things you might be going through. And I guess with that, it is about your own gut feeling and seeing, you know, whether the psychologist or the therapist that you're seeing makes you feel heard and valued and listened to. And I guess with specifically looking at South Asian people, you know, that first session is really important, and you can ask those questions to that therapist that you might be thinking about working with, and asking them those questions around, you know, how much do they know about South Asian culture or the specific culture that you're from, and how often have they worked with people from your culture, and do they have an understanding of some of the difficult things like family and you know, those cultural aspects that can have a big play into some of the mental distress that you might be experiencing. So again, remembering that the service that you'll get, you know, the relationship that you have with a psychologist is a service they're providing, so it's absolutely in your right to be able to ask certain questions of them and ask about what, you know, whether that psychologist or therapist can meet your needs.
Yep, that makes sense as well. You know, when you engage any kind of person that can provide you service, you need to do your work, you need to do your homework, ask the right questions and make a wise choice. Next question I have for you is, what are some things that stop people from seeking help, particularly South Asians, because I know there is stigma in seeking help regarding mental health?
As you said, stigma, you know, that whole idea of log kya kahenge in Hindi, you know, what will people say, what will people think, and having that shame that comes along with, oh yeah, you're nodding.
Yeah. I'm just doing a Tamil equivalent here.
Yeah. That whole idea of what will people think and that stigma attached to mental health issues. And then also thinking about it, like, even we were talking about this earlier about like how things are portrayed in the Bollywood, and
it's, you know, very
Tamil
extreme
movies.
Yeah,
so you just see this one end of the spectrum of mental distress, and you know, unfortunately in some of the South Asian countries, you know, people who have mental health issues do get institutionalized or get separated from their families, and you know, but yeah, so you only see one side of mental health issues. I guess it's about, you know, normalizing it as well, and realizing that some of those feelings that we might be struggling with, like anxiety or, you know, feeling low, they are part of being human, and you know, a lot of us experience some of those difficulties, and having, you know, seeing a therapist or seeing a counselor, or talking to a friend even, you know, and being open and sharing some of those difficulties and being vulnerable actually can be really positive and help make you feel a lot better.
Yeah, it's funny that she touched base on Bollywood Tamil movies, because they almost give you the impression that something drastic or dramatic needs to happen, or you need to see very, like, you know, crazy behavior from someone to be convinced that someone needs help with their mental health, and that's not the case. You don't wait for extreme reactions to surface, because maybe that might be too late in some cases, and it's far better to just deal with things as they come. And yeah, don't believe those films.
Yeah, don't believe the films.
No.
Although there's one film that has done really well. It's that one with Alia Bhatt.
Yes, the one with Shah Rukh Khan.
Yeah.
Yes, Dear Zindagi.
Dear Zindagi. Like, that's a good one, because it talks about like the subtleties of depression.
Yeah, I do agree. I did like that film.
Yeah.
It wasn't so dramatic. The last question I have is, how can we access help?
I guess it is, you know, the first thing I'd recommend is maybe talking to your GP if you're feeling like you have some difficulties with mental health stuff going on. Talking to them about it, and they'll be able to refer you on to services that might be able to help. So, you know, within the DHB, for instance, you've got, you know, alcohol and drug support, you've got adult community mental health, so you've also got family and child mental health as well. So yeah, there's lots of different options there. The GP can also refer you on to kind of counselling, different counselling services or NGO services that might be available. There's also, you know, 1737, which is a free number you can text or call, and there's a counsellor on the other side that might be able to talk through with you whatever experience you might be going through. So yeah, there's lots of different options, and yeah, definitely, you know, take that step, get the help that you you deserve, and that will be beneficial.
Yeah. And for those of you who are younger, you know, students
Yeah.
at school, university, please don't be shy from utilizing services at your school and university.
Absolutely.
I benefited from the university counseling, and I actually should have made use of the school counseling services. I was too scared to because of the shame or whatever I'm going to bring to my family, but I did finally end up getting help from university, and it was very valuable. So don't be shy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, be brave and go there. Okay, so now that we are done with questions, I thought we can go through a few topics, general topics that I think are quite relevant to the South Asian community, and I think would be quite interesting to touch base on. So the first thing I have is racism.
So yeah, with racism, I guess there's different layers to racism, right?
Yeah.
Like you've got that overt racism, which can be very traumatic, you know, someone obviously making you feel less than or different from where you come from and discriminated against. And then you've also got, you know, those little microaggressions, those subtle things that people might say, and you have to double take and be like, what was that? Was that something? And then it's also about your own internalized racism and the racism that exists within our own communities, like, you know, that whole movement against colorism happening at the moment, you know, no more Fair and Lovely, please. Yeah, you know, so yeah, there's a lot of different layers to it, and all of those layers can have an impact on our sense of self-worth and our sense of belonging within communities and within belonging to ourselves as well, and especially with the internalized stuff, you know, a lot of self-hatred can come of that. And as we know, you know, belonging to ourselves and belonging to a community is really, really vital when it comes to positive mental well-being. So yeah, racism is something, you know, if you have experienced it or are struggling with it, I would highly recommend talking to someone about it and talking to a therapist and seeking help, or even, you know, finding safe people that, you know, get it, and finding solace in those shared lived experiences too.
Yeah. That does help when you talk to someone that's been through it yourself, and you're like, oh, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
And that immediately makes it better, that you're not alone. Second topic is migration.
And that's another thing that can have an impact on our mental well-being, because it's like, you know, you go from one country and where you were born and you've got all this family support and lots of love and care, and you move into like a new foreign land and can feel quite isolated. And again, it goes down to that you know, sense of belonging we were talking about. When you're isolated and you don't feel that you belong to that community, especially initially when people migrate, it can be a really vulnerable time for people.
Number 3 is dual identities.
Oh, that's a relatable one.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, so like so many South Asians going, holla!
Yeah. So again, that's that, you know, balancing parental expectations or the expectations of our South Asianness and that culture, but then also trying to fit into that dominant culture. And and it can be really, you know, again with mental health issues, it can be just trying to navigate those two different things can create a lot of inner distress and inner turmoil within people. So for instance, even thinking about, sometimes South Asian women may get taught that, you know, that you have to listen to our elders and you know, don't speak too much and be quite passive, and then you might have a dominant culture which is rewarding and encouraging women to, you know, speak out, be confident, be assertive, and then kind of grappling with that different balance, you know, of what the one hand we might have learned and what the expectations in that dominant culture are. And that's even relevant for things like, you know, parental expectations, like parents,
another video.
No. Yeah, that's another video.
A video on its own.
Oh yeah, so with dual identities, you know, having your, I guess the parental expectations we might have on the one hand of what we might want to do and how we might want to, you know, they might want us to be a certain way. And again, it's with that collective, you know, South Asian collective culture where our sense of self and our sense of identity is very much tied to our family.
Yeah.
And then we're also grappling with that individualistic dominant culture which says, you know, you gotta pursue your dreams, you gotta pursue your passions, and then you've got parents saying, no, you have to be a doctor or a
you
lawyer,
have to be a family woman
or an engineer, or get married,
be a good mother, stay home.
Yeah, so all of those things happening, and then the dominant culture saying do what you want. So again, especially as children of immigrant parents, you know, you might start to want to do those things for yourself and want to pursue your individual passions, but then experience perhaps a significant amount of guilt or resentment or you know, those sorts of feelings around some of the things happening with your family. And so again, that's another thing, you know, a therapist or getting some help from a counsellor that might be able to kind of help you process that and give you some strategies that might be able to help you balance some of those things that come with, you know, being bicultural and having those dual identities.
It is hard. It's like living two lives.
Yeah. And
actually, Neha and I grew up in a city where there weren't many South Asians to relate to about this. So it was hard. It was hard. And considering like a lot of our friends were not of the same culture, or they didn't belong to two cultures, it was very hard to find someone relatable.
Hence why. So that's it.
And that is it. That's the end of our list. And I really hope that you enjoyed this. If you made it this far, thank you for sticking around and watching it all the way. I hope this was useful. I reiterate, I'm really sorry if I hurt your feelings by not completely addressing your questions specifically. I hope that you understand what's at stake with Neha and her profession. So I thoroughly enjoyed that, and if you did, please leave a comment,
like and subscribe,
like and subscribe, and let me know if you like this, because then I can have Neha on more to discuss certain topics in more detail, you know, rather than just one video skimming over things. We can get in more discussion. So that really is the end of the video. Also, another thing, this is Neha's first time doing something like this, so double thumbs up if you made it this far. I'm very proud of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for all your help.
Thank you for watching enough rambling for me. Please show some support.
True.
Friday night water. Bye. You gonna say bye?
Bye.
Bye.